Hey guys, George here from Zero Period Productions. A few weeks ago, I made a video showing off Solitude as it appears in Greymoor, the upcoming expansion for the Elder Scrolls Online. In this video, I commented on the similarities in terms of design, size, and scale to the version of Solitude that we were used to in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. I thought that the city as it appears in ESO looked a bit younger, not as worn down, and that it did feel slightly larger to allow for players to run around without being on top of one another. In the end, I thought it was a really well done take on the city, making some changes while still maintaining the same look and feel of the city so that players wouldn't feel lost or even alienated. If you haven't seen that video yet and would like to, I'll leave a card on screen now. And while Solitude will be the main city for this expansion, it is only one of several familiar locations that we'll visit. Greymoor includes the new area designated as Western Skyrim, which includes the two holds of Hjalmark and Haafingar, as well as the underground caverns of Blackreach, which have been expanded upon and account for a significant part of the playable space in this expansion. Today, I wanted to show off a few of these familiar locations. The very first of which will be as we walk from the City of Solitude to Dragonbridge. Along this road, we have one major landmark, Mount Kilcreath and the Statue of Meridia. The statue is much larger and more prominent from the main road than it appears in Skyrim, and even the interior of the temple itself looks a bit different, definitely a bit larger and a little bit less run down. You'll be able to take on a quest from one of Meridia's priests, which takes you through the temple, but no spoilers as to what that quest entails. Continuing down the main road, you'll soon reach Dragonbridge, which is quite a bit different from what you might remember of it in Skyrim. While in the 4th era it served as a small settlement with an inn, several houses, a mill, and even an outpost for the Penitus Oculatus, during the 2nd era, Dragonbridge serves instead as a small military outpost and camp. It plays home to a military barracks, small watchtower, as well as several tents and supply carts. Speaking with one of the guards, they say that Dragonbridge is the first line of defense for Solitude, and given the instability across Western Skyrim during the 2nd era, focusing on the capital's defenses is much better than having the area play home to Haafingar's citizens. Given the attacks from vampires, werewolves, and witches' covens, keeping a strong line of defense is probably one of the safest decisions. Next up on our little tour of Western Skyrim is Morthal, and while the layout of this small city and capital may seem very similar to that of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, the buildings are quite different in terms of design, sporting a more Viking-esque design. As a result, even the interior designs for Morthal's buildings are notably different, with the Jarl's Longhouse featuring hardwood floors, a more open kitchen area, and the Jarl's bedroom now being on the 3rd floor, which makes a lot of sense as the exterior for the Jarl's Longhouse in both ESO Greymoor and in Skyrim seems to feature 3 stories. Overall, the Morthal interiors have a much more rustic and Viking feel to them, maybe a bit more akin to the skull houses that we see in the Blood Moon DLC for the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. In Greymoor, Morthal's Inn goes by the name of the Whispering Axe, as opposed to the Moorside Inn as it appears in Skyrim. Much like the Jarl's Longhouse, the inn features hardwood floors as well as a few recessed areas with stone floors. Unlike Skyrim's inns, the Whispering Axe features 3 floors, and more than 3 beds, which, that alone is kind of a big improvement for an inn. You know, you'd think you'd want more than a potential of 3 guests at a time. That being said, don't expect much privacy if you are staying at this inn. Overall, the inn feels much larger, and the change in size and design is a really welcome change. The city's docks are partially expanded, adding new walkways around the mill, which makes sense for a loading and unloading area for supply boats and ships. There seem to be a couple less buildings overall than there appear in Skyrim, but 1,000 years is a long time to tear down, rebuild, and even build new houses as well. This version of Morthal really makes me wish that we had gotten more unique versions of the different hold capitals in Skyrim, as opposed to so many of them using the exact same buildings and structures. Next up is Labyrinthian, which serves as one of 2 public dungeons within the expansion. Dungeons in which you can join alone or with as many friends as you like, as well as running into other players as they make their way through the area. Labyrinthian is sealed off and is entered from the northern entrance. The courtyard can be fully explored, as well as some of the Labyrinthian temple itself, up to the large room in which you would face the skeletal dragon in Skyrim. Instead, this chamber is where you will face one of the public dungeon bosses, a powerful necromancer who raises wave upon wave of undead before you're able to face them head on. The temple also has a couple of new side entrances, allowing you to explore some new areas and wings not present in Skyrim's version. Moving back outside, we head to the center of Labyrinthian's courtyard, where we will find the small barrow known as Bromjunar Sanctuary, home to the Dragon Priest Shrine. The barrow is home to a few enemies as well as a sky shard, but other than that, it just serves as a nice homage to the location as it appears in Skyrim. One new detail is the dragon banners on the outside of the sanctuary, noting its connection to the dragon cult of old. One part of Labyrinthian that didn't make an appearance in Greymoor was Shalador's Maze, which I was kinda hoping to see. That being said, the maze was originally constructed by Shalador as a testing grounds for new archmages, so I guess it's possible that we simply aren't permitted to enter, and that it's simply locked away. Now, onto one of the largest fixtures of Greymoor, the Dwarven City and underground caverns of Blackreach. Even without purchasing Greymoor, you can get a glimpse of Blackreach through Greymoor's prologue quest, available to all players. In this prologue quest, Blackreach is accessed via a small underground tunnel, while in the expansion itself it can be accessed via great lifts, such as the Hjalmarch Great Lift. While this lift doesn't appear in the Elder Scrolls V, we do see multiple lifts that serve as entryways into the massive Dwarven cavern. So it's not unheard of that there might have been a couple extra lifts that were lost in the 1,000 years that span the two games. As it is, it seems that the Blackreach that we see in Greymoor is a completely different set of caverns from the ones that we explore in Skyrim. This set of caverns are likely very close to Skyrim's Blackreach, but shows that the Dwarven City is much larger than we had originally expected. This surprised me a bit, as the portion of Blackreach that we see in the Greymoor free prologue quest seemed to be a remake of Skyrim's Blackreach. I had expected to see more of that Blackreach, the one that we were already familiar with. Taking the Hjalmarch lift takes you to one of 4 massive caverns within Blackreach, with a large vampiric castle off in the distance. Blackreach is a massive exploration zone and makes up 40% of the entire playable space in this content drop. Looking at the map for this subterranean zone, we can see that there are several caverns connected by smaller tunnels. These different zones, as I'll refer to them, have a different feel. We have the vampiric Greymoor Keep in the northernmost zone, a small settlement known as Dusktown to the south, the Dark Moon Grotto to the west, and the Lightless Hollow to the east. The Lightless Hollow most closely matches the Blackreach that we know from Skyrim, with towering blue, bioluminescent mushrooms, dwarven structures, and your favorite alchemy ingredient, Crimson Nirnroot. Falmer and Chorus return as 2 of the enemy types found across this underground maze, as well as dwarven automatons, vampires, and some new wildlife as well. Blackreach also plays home to the second public dungeon in this expansion, which I'm probably not going to pronounce right at all. Nchuthenkarst? Nchuthenkarst. Stupid dwarves. While I had expected to see the more familiar parts of Blackreach, it's kinda nice to have something new and different. Keep in mind, the overland for Western Skyrim is already something very familiar, bringing back locations such as Solitude, Morthal, and so on. By going in a different direction with Blackreach, we have an interesting contrast of both old and new locations in this expansion. It also fits into any concerns that players had about Blackreach, seeing as the city was locked down and largely unexplored and untouched by the events of Skyrim. The caverns we see in Greymoor were more easily reached, while the caverns in Skyrim were much harder to access. Now, there's obviously much more to this expansion than these major locations, but the goal for this video was to give a general overview for the entire expansion zone, rather than the more focused Solitude video that I did previously. In addition to these locations, we have plenty of delves, the new public event known as Harrowstorms, so many different minor locations and points of interest, as well as the new 12-man trial, Kynes Aegis. Not to mention Antiquities, an archaeology-inspired system in which you can uncover long-lost lore and artifacts of Tamriel's past, some of which include furnishings for your home, and others even taking the form of unique gear. One thing I was hoping to see in Greymoor was the city-state of Snowhawk. In Skyrim, we simply know it as Fort Snowhawk, another run-down military fortress that you can explore and clear out. But back in the Elder Scrolls I arena, Snowhawk was one of 8 major cities in Skyrim, and was even said to rival Solitude as a city. By the 4th era, Snowhawk had been abandoned and occupied by necromancers, making Morthal the largest city in the Hjalmarch Hold. While I had hoped to see Snowhawk in ESO, we don't have any founding date for the city-state, meaning that it could have been built well after the events of the Elder Scrolls Online. This was just wishful thinking on my part, as it could have been cool to see what ZeniMax Online would have been able to do with a location that we don't know all that much about. Speaking to the overall design of Western Skyrim in the Greymoor expansion, I really loved the region and their take on it. Reading through different comments and opinions from the PTS, I've seen a few people say that they felt that there were less trees in ESO's Western Skyrim than there were in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. I honestly felt that they filled in the area pretty well with trees. It didn't feel overcrowded, but it didn't feel sparse either. One speculation as to why there would be less trees is simply for performance reasons. With any MMO, you want to try and provide a game that will run across a very wide selection of PCs. And things like trees, grass, and other foliage are some of the items that can really eat up more processing power. Either way, I didn't think that Greymoor's version was lacking on trees. And if anything, they felt a little bit taller and much more grand than the ones we had in Skyrim. Both ESO and Skyrim have different designs, they're made in different engines, and they're set 1,000 years apart. They're not going to look exactly the same for these reasons and more. Skyrim and most of the single-player Elder Scrolls games scaled down the world spaces significantly so that current hardware can handle it. To some degree, the Elder Scrolls Online has a larger scale, but obviously still not to the point at which it would be anywhere close to a 1-to-1 scale with how Tamriel would actually appear. These are representations of a massive fantasy world. There is still some suspension of disbelief in terms of how these places would truly appear versus how they appear in the games. I hope you all enjoyed this video, showcasing some familiar locales from the upcoming ESO expansion. Greymoor launches on May 26, 2020 on PC and Mac, and on June 9th on Xbox One and PS4. I'm planning on streaming a ton of Greymoor once it releases. I've managed to record all this footage on the playtest server without seeing any of the quests, main or otherwise. So while I've seen plenty of the world space, the stories and characters will still be fresh for me, and I'll be able to go in relatively blind as a result. Thank you guys for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, check out my Patreon, which really helps in allowing me to continue to be a full-time content creator. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.